I never thought I would cruise the Amazon, but here we are, Linda and I, and it's June the 1st, and we're on the Regent Seven Seas SS Navigator. We're about to enter the Amazon. As you can see, the water is very brown because of the silt. The Amazon basin is huge. It is the biggest rainforest in the world, and we are going 900 miles up the river to Manaus, which is approximately a quarter of the way up the river, which is over 3,600 miles. And we are relaxing on board before we get to the serious business of exploring the Amazon. You can see behind Linda how vast the river is, and I will come back to that. And here we are close to the bank, but not much to see. We make a technical stop at a place called Macapo, pick up a pilot, as the river is very tricky to navigate up. And you'll notice some hills in the distance and actual greenery. Not much forest so far. The river is flooded because there has been a lot of heavy rain in the past week, as you will see. The first day there are a number of insects on board, including this giant cockroach, which everybody wants to photograph. And some people scour the banks for some wildlife or people, while we relax up on the top deck for a little bit of golf. The riverbank gets steeper at this point, and then we see a freighter going past, and so I was surprised at the few freighters there were, considering it's the only means of travel in the area. There are no roads. Drinks are free on board, so we have our usual pre-dinner drink with canapes provided by the butler. Next morning there's smoke in the forest. Could it be Indians? And we pass Santarém during the night, which we were supposed to have docked at that day. Because of the very strong currents, we had to miss it, and our first stop was Boca da Valeria, a very small village with a population of maybe 100. An idea here how wide the Amazon is at this point, and we go ashore by tender. Before we leave the side of the ship, there are local canoes tied up alongside, and kids trying to sell us things, and there you can see one of the canoes from the window. Boca da Valeria has a school and a church, and a lot of kids who, when you go ashore, they take you by the hand to show you the sights, although none of them can speak English, or very few. And there are the kids that helped us around. Grandma had two, and I had two. The school and the head teacher, who did speak a little English, and on the wall was a chart of the numbers in Portuguese, so we were able to find out how old the children were. Next door was the church, but the steps were underwater, so we had to climb under the fence. A very simple church, but very nice, I'm sure. My two girls and a picture of the electricity meter. Some of the girls were dressed up in native costumes, and this young lady had these two birds on a stick in her hand. So we had to give them some sweeties. On the way back to the jetty, we passed this house, and a stingray you can see in the water. I think it's a stingray, it's a ray. The sweeties came from the chocolates we got every night under our pillow, and we dished them out to the guides, and there they are arguing as to who's to get what. So 2 hours later it was back on the boat and back on the river, and here we are taking a constitutional, as we didn't get much on the island, and a view of the pool, not well used. Freighters on the river and a beautiful sunlight, and also a sunset as we make our way up the river to Manaus. Manaus is a city of 2.1 million people, and in the background you can see a bridge, which is one of the longest in the world, but goes nowhere, as there is nothing on the south side of the Amazon River. The first day we take a tour of the city. Manaus is the transportation hub for the river, but today was a Sunday, so there wasn't a whole lot of action on the docks. our guide for the day, who had quite a loud voice. And Manaus is a pretty run-down city, although it does have some nice buildings dating back to the late 1800s.
More than welcome, and then introduction to yourself. There we go, Texas. That's why the company is still here. We have a JVC.
Main attraction is the Opera House, and the season actually finished that day with a Wagner opera. Two of our friends from the boat, Kim and Thomas, and then we were shown the reception room, which was quite interesting, and it's all
From Glasgow and Scotland. Here we have marble. And then in the door, Carrara marble from Italy. The same as the chandeliers, Christos Amuranus, and all the chandeliers inside and here. The floor you see in front of yourself is made by 12,000 pieces of wood without glue or nails. It's a technique we call marquetry. So all like a puzzle with pressure. No glue, no nails inside.
One of the founders of the opera, which of course was all paid for by the rubber barons. And below us there was a carriage, and there were some girls who were taking their photographs sitting in the carriage. From the balcony I also took some photographs of nearby buildings which would look like they needed some maintenance. And then we were taken inside the auditorium. Built in 1896, the auditorium was also very ornate, and we sat down for a chat.
1881 and finished December 31st, 1896 on the mid-opening day.
The stage, and in the background you heard a tuba player practicing. The orchestra are under the stage. Having had our piece of culture, it was off to the zoo, and for some reason the English were singled out for throwing trash on the ground. Don't know why. These are animals found in the Amazon, and the rest are fairly normal. Well, monkeys of course. Because it was a Sunday, a lot of locals were out enjoying the zoo with their families, so I just took a few snaps. You can see a caiman through the wire netting and an anaconda, a large snake. And then it was off to the museum, which was not terribly exciting. These are blowpipes used by the Indians. If a male found a female he liked, he attached one of these to a finger and pulled her along. Our return to the boat, we passed some poor areas, and a final shot of the sun going down over the bridge. Manaus is actually on the river Negre, and the water is clear because it goes over the rocks. Our cabin is second from the left in the middle row, if you're interested. We can also see the dome of the Opera House. On the right of the picture you can see a tucuxi, which is one of the river dolphin. They're hard to photograph, and the two types of dolphins are tucuxi and boto, and we did see them, quite a lot of them, in the harbour. But as we made our way to our destination, we passed this village, which is underwater pretty much, flooding again, and that's a gas station. After about an hour on the large boat that you saw earlier, we arrive at our destination, which is a restaurant, but we don't get anything to eat. Instead, we transfer to canoes to see at close quarters the wildlife in the jungle. And to start with, there's not very much. We see the jungle and occasional flower, a bromeliad in a tree to keep out of the water, and this unusual bird, whose name I cannot remember. That's where the sort of area we're in, and there are some lily pads with very sharp spikes on the underside. We spot this very nice looking egret, which stays long enough in the tree for us to get some photographs and then flies off into the distance. Another interesting looking bird, looks a bit like a pheasant. And then we are off into the jungle. The Amazon, which is normally 1 mile wide, is now apparently 5 miles wide. One of the passengers spots a monkey in a tree, which are in fact 2. I hope you can see them. Back to the place where we started the trip and off to the meeting of the waters, where the Rio Negre and the Amazon meet. You can see the difference there between the dark muddy waters and the clear Negre waters. Some interesting housing in Manaus, and we approach the SS Navigator, and the rain is catching up with us, and next day it's off downstream. Big city of Parintins. Then, now that we're actually stopped, we attended ashore, and the driver looks like a kamikaze pilot. Parintins has very little to offer, except we can buy a bag, and the vultures keep watching us to make sure we're behaving. But what they do have is a Boya Boomba show, which is very loud, and I will just let you watch it in peace. It was a good show, and so we're off back to the ship with our ears ringing, and as you can see the current is very strong and the tender is struggling to get to the docking area. Santarém, and the second largest city on the Amazon. We had decided not to tour, which was a mistake I think, and went ashore on our own and visited the museum to start with, and then the shopping area, and actually there were a lot of quite interesting shops. The Yamada department store, which was closed, and the cathedral, which was also closed, so we missed those. Now we're looking at the river Tapajós, it's called, and you can see here very good. As we sail, we pass the wedding of the waters, as it's called, which is where the river Tapajós and the Amazon meet. Another full day sailing down the Amazon, choosing the right passage, and then stopping at Macapa to let the pilots off. Farewell to the Amazon and on to Devil's Island.